The day I won the lottery, I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even smile. I just folded the ticket and sat quietly in my kitchen because I knew something most people don't understand. Money doesn't just change your life. It reveals everyone around you. At the time, I was living with my son Daniel and his wife Renee. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. Or at least that's what they believed. To them, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was someone who needed help. Someone who depended on them. And over time, that's exactly how they started treating me. Not openly. Never directly. But in small, consistent ways. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Decisions made without including me. That quiet feeling that you don't belong in your own family. I noticed everything. I just didn't react. Because reacting without understanding people is a mistake. And I wanted to understand exactly who they had become. A few days after I won the money, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. Renee's voice. Sharp. Controlled. How long is she planning to stay here? Silence. Then my son's voice. I'll talk to her, just give me time. Time. That word stayed with me. Because suddenly everything made sense. I wasn't temporary in their house. I was a problem they were trying to solve. That night I sat alone in my room, holding a secret worth millions. And for the first time I asked myself a different question. Not why are they treating me this way? But, what would they do if they knew the truth? I already knew the answer. That's why I didn't tell them. That's why I stayed quiet. Because the moment people see money, they stop seeing you. And I wasn't ready to show them what I had. Not yet. First, I needed to see exactly how far they would go. When they believed I had nothing. And what I heard next proved they were already planning something behind my back. The morning after I heard their conversation, I stopped seeing that house as home. It became a place I was temporarily staying in. And that shift changed everything. I didn't confront them. I didn't ask questions. Because once people show you how they think, you don't argue, you observe. That same day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I left the house early, before anyone woke up. Not for a walk. For answers. There was a small office downtown I had passed hundreds of times but never entered. Quiet. Professional. The kind of place where serious decisions are made without noise. That's where I went. I didn't explain everything. I didn't need to. I need to understand how to manage a large amount of money. Privately, I told the advisor sitting across from me. He didn't look surprised. People like him hear things like that more often than you'd think. What kind of amount? He asked. I looked at him for a second, then said it. More than enough to change everything. That was the beginning. Over the next few days, I learned more than I had in years. Accounts, structures, protection, privacy. Not complicated, just things I had never needed to think about before. But now I did. 'Cause I wasn't just holding money. I was holding control. Back at home, nothing changed on the surface. Renee still smiled politely. Daniel still avoided uncomfortable conversations. But I noticed something new. They had started watching me. Not directly. Subtly. Questions about where I was going. Why I was leaving the house. Who I was talking to. It wasn't concern. It was curiosity. And curiosity usually comes from suspicion. That told me something important. They didn't know anything yet. But they felt something was different. Good. Because that meant I was still ahead. That night I organized everything I had started. Not emotionally, logically, step by step. Move quietly. Protect everything. Say nothing. And what I discovered about my own situation next made me realize I had waited far too long. A week after I began putting things in place, I noticed something had changed. Not in me, I in them. Renee started asking more questions. Small ones. Casual on the surface. Where did you go this morning? Who were you talking to on the phone? You've been out a lot lately. Her tone was light. But her eyes weren't. Daniel was quieter than usual. Watching. Thinking. Like he knew something was off but couldn't figure out what it. That's when I realized. They didn't know the truth. But they felt it. And that's dangerous. Because when people feel something is being hidden from them, they start looking. 2 days later, I came back home earlier than expected. The house was silent. Too silent that as I walked toward my room I heard movement. My door was slightly open. I stopped. Then I saw it. Renee. Standing inside my room. Going through my things. Slowly. Carefully. Like she didn't want to get caught. For a moment I didn't move. I just watched. Because sometimes, what people do when they think you're not there tells you everything. Then I stepped forward. She turned instantly surprised. "Oh, I was just cleaning," she said quickly. Cleaning in my room, going through my drawers. I looked at her. Calm. Steady. "You don't need to do that," I said. She forced a smile. "I was just trying to help." Of course she was. I didn't argue. I didn't question her. Because this wasn't about what she was doing. It was about why. They were looking for something. And that meant one thing. They were already suspicious. That night, Daniel tried to act normal. But I saw it. The tension. The hesitation. He wanted to ask something. But he didn't know how. Good. Because the moment they asked directly, the situation changes. And I wasn't ready for that. So I stayed the same. Quiet. Predictable. Unbothered. On the outside. But inside, everything was moving. Faster now. Because this wasn't just about planning anymore. It was about timing. But what they did the next day proved they weren't just suspicious anymore. They were already trying to. The next morning Daniel finally said it. Not directly. But enough. "Mom. You've been going out a lot," he started, pretending it was casual. "Everything okay?" There it was. Not concern. Investigation. "I'm fine," I replied calmly. He nodded but didn't look convinced. Renee didn't say anything at first. She just watched like she was waiting for me to slip to say something that would confirm whatever they were thinking. But I didn't. Because the moment you explain yourself unnecessarily, you give people power they didn't earn. That same afternoon, something else happened. I went to leave the house, and my bag wasn't where I had left it. I stopped. Looked around, then found it on the kitchen counter, moved. Opened. Nothing obvious missing, but that wasn't the point. They weren't guessing anymore. They were checking. That's when it became clear. This wasn't just curiosity. This was control. That evening, things escalated. Renee brought it up at dinner. "You've been very secretive lately," she said, placing her fork down slowly. Daniel stayed quiet, letting her lead. "I don't think that's fair," I replied. Her smile tightened. "We're just concerned. You're living here after all. Living here. Not this is your home. Not your family. Living here." That wording mattered, because it came with conditions. Unspoken, but very real. Daniel finally stepped in. "Mom, if something's going on, you should tell us. We can help." Help. That word almost made me smile. Because help only comes when people believe you need it. And they still believed I did. "I'll let you know if I need anything," I said simply. Conversation ended. But the tension didn't. That night, I locked my room for the first time. Not out of fear. Out of clarity, because now I understood exactly where I stood. This wasn't my house. And I wasn't in control here. But that was about to change. The next morning I made another move. Bigger this time. Not in what I did next is what finally confirmed their biggest fear, that I was hiding something far more valuable. The next step I took changed everything. Up until now I had been careful. Quiet. Controlled. But there comes a point where planning isn't enough, you have to act. That morning I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Daniel. Not Renee. I simply left. This time I wasn't going to an advisor's office, I was going somewhere more permanent. The real estate office was quiet. Professional. No unnecessary questions. Exactly what I needed. "I'm looking for something private," I told the agent. "Not too large. But completely mine." She nodded, understanding immediately. Within hours I was looking at properties, not dreaming. Deciding. Because for the first time in years I wasn't thinking about what others needed, I was thinking about what I deserved. By the end of the day I had chosen one. Simple. Peaceful. Away from everything and more importantly, under my name. No connections. No shared control, mine. The paperwork moved faster than I expected. Money has a way of doing that. By the time I returned home that evening, something felt different. The air was heavier. Renee was in the living room, waiting. Daniel standing beside her. That never happened. They didn't wait for me before. "What's going on?" Daniel asked the moment I stepped in. Straight to the point. No pretending anymore. Nothing, I said calmly. Renee let out a short laugh. Nothing? You disappear all day, won't answer calls, and expect us to believe nothing's going on. Calls. I hadn't answered them. That was intentional. Because I didn't want to explain anything before I was ready. You're overreacting, I replied. Her expression hardened. No, she said quietly. You're hiding something. There it was. Not suspicion, certainty. They knew. Or at least they thought they did. Daniel stepped closer. Mom, we found something in your drawer, he said. That made me pause. Not because I was afraid, because I wanted to know how much. What did you find? But before I revealed anything, I needed to make sure they had already shown me exactly who there. That night I didn't say anything more. Not because I was unsure. Because I was ready. Daniel and Renee thought they had discovered something important. A document. A clue. A piece of information that made them feel closer to the truth. But they didn't understand one thing. A single piece of paper doesn't tell the whole story. And I had made sure of that. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Because what I was about to do would end everything the way it was. When I walked into the kitchen, they were already there. Waiting. That told me enough. They hadn't slept well. People don't rest when they feel like they're missing something important. Mom, we need to talk, Daniel said immediately. I nodded. Then let's talk. We sat down, same table. Different positions. Renee spoke first this time. We know you're hiding something, she said, her tone controlled but firm. And we think we deserve to know what it is. Deserve. That word mattered. Because it showed exactly how they saw the situation. Not concern, entitlement. I looked at them calmly. For a moment I considered staying silent again. But there was no need anymore. Everything was already in place. So instead of avoiding the conversation, I shifted it. Why do you think you deserve to know? I asked. That wasn't what they expected. Daniel frowned slightly. Because you're living here. Because we're family. Family, I almost smiled. Because family doesn't search your room. Family doesn't question your every move. Family doesn't wait for you like they're building a case. But I didn't say that. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed something on the table. A document. Clean. Official. Different from the one they had found. Renee leaned forward first. Then Daniel. And as their eyes moved across the page, everything changed. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then something else. Something they couldn't hide anymore. Because the moment they understood the truth, they didn't ask how I was, they asked what they could get. The silence didn't last long. It never does. When money is involved. Daniel was the first to speak. Mom, why didn't you tell us? His voice was softer now. Careful. Not confused, calculated. Renee leaned forward slightly, her tone completely different from the night before. We could have helped you manage this, she added. You shouldn't handle something this big alone. Help. There it was again. But this time it sounded different. Not like concern, like opportunity. I didn't respond immediately. I watched them. The same two people who just days ago were questioning my presence in their house were now choosing their words carefully, adjusting, adapting, because the situation had changed, and so had their behavior. I managed just fine until now, I said calmly. Daniel nodded quickly. Of course, but this is different. This is life-changing. He wasn't wrong. But not in the way he meant. Renee smiled, something I hadn't seen in weeks. We should sit together and plan this properly, she said. Make sure everything is secure. Secure. Interesting word. Because suddenly they were concerned about protecting something they didn't even know existed before yesterday. I leaned back slightly. No, I said. Simple. Clear. Both of them paused. Daniel frowned. What do you mean no? I mean, I continued. This doesn't involve you. That shifted the room instantly. Renee's smile disappeared. Daniel's expression tightened. Mom, we're your family, he said, a little more firmly now. And I'm your mother, I replied. That didn't seem to matter last week. Silence. Real silence this time. Because now they understood something important. This wasn't just about money. It was about memory. Everything they had said. Everything they had done. Everything they thought I didn't notice. It all counted. Renee tried to recover. You're taking this the wrong way, she said quickly. We were just worried about you. No, I said calm, and what Daniel said next made it clear this wasn't just about helping anymore. It was about. Daniel didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. Mom, this isn't just your decision, he said slower this time. You're part of this family. What you do affects all of us. There it was. Not concerned to claim. Renee didn't interrupt. She just watched, letting him push forward. That I stayed where I was. Calm. Still. Explain that, I said. Daniel exhaled like he was trying to stay reasonable. If something happens legally, financially, it comes back to us too. We should be involved. Should. Another word that assumes permission. I shook my head slightly. No. It doesn't. That's when the shift happened. His patience started slipping. Mom, you're not thinking this through, he said. That kind of money, people take advantage. You can't handle all of that alone. There it was again. Not said directly but clear. You can't handle it. I let that sit for a second. Then I answered. I already have. Silence. Because facts don't argue. Renee stepped in, softer tone, different angle. We're just trying to protect you, she said. At least let us see the details. Just to be sure everything is right. Details. That's what they wanted. Access. Control starts with information. No, I repeated, short. Final. Daniel leaned forward, frustration now visible. So what's your plan? Just walk away? Leave like this? Yes, I said. No hesitation. No explanation. That answer landed harder than anything else, because now it was real. Not a discussion. A decision. Renee's voice dropped. You're overreacting, she said quietly. No, I replied. I'm responding. That ended. I didn't know more arguments. Because arguments only happen when both sides think they have influence. They didn't. Not anymore. I walked back to my room, closed the door and locked it. Not out of fear. Out of finality. Everything that needed to be decided already was. The house felt different that night. Heavy. Quiet. Uncomfortable. Because now they weren't trying to, but what happened when I actually left proved they never thought I would really go through with it. I didn't make an announcement, no final conversation. No explanation. The next morning I packed what mattered. Not everything, just what was mine. Clothes. Documents. A few personal things that actually meant something. The rest? It stayed. Because attachment is what keeps people stuck. And I wasn't staying. When I walked into the hallway with my bags, Daniel was already there. Of course he was. People notice movement when it's real. You're actually leaving? He asked. Not shocked. Just unprepared. Yes, I said. Renee stood behind him, arms crossed, watching, waiting for hesitation. There wasn't any. This isn't necessary, Daniel said quickly. We can figure this out. Now. Now he wanted to figure it out. I shook my head. It was necessary a week ago. Silence. Because timing matters. And they had already missed theirs. Renee stepped forward. So that's it? You just walk away? She asked. No, I replied calmly. I move forward. There's a difference. Daniel's voice dropped. Mom, this is still your home. I looked at him for a second. Not emotionally, clearly. No, I said. It was never mine. That landed, because deep down he knew it was true. I walked past them. No drama, no raised voices. Just movement. Because once a decision is made properly, it doesn't need to be defended outside. The car was already waiting. Everything had been arranged. Quietly. Exactly the way I planned. I didn't look back when I got in. Not because I was angry, because I was done. The drive was silent. But not heavy. Clear. For the first time in a long time there was no tension. No guessing. No adjusting myself to fit someone else's space. Just control. When I reached the new house I stepped inside slowly. Empty rooms. Clean spaced. No history, no expectations, just mine. And that's when it really hit me. I hadn't just left a house, that I had left a version of myself behind. The one that stayed quiet for too long. The one that waited for respect instead of demanding it. That version. Respect should never depend on what you have, it should depend on. The first night in the new house was quiet. Not the uncomfortable kind of silence I had gotten used to. A different kind. Controlled. For the first time in years I didn't have to think about how I was being seen. I didn't have to adjust my words, my timing, or my presence just to avoid tension. Everything felt simple, because it was mine.no expectations.no conditions, just space. The next few days were busy. Not emotionally. Practically. Setting things up. Finalizing documents. Making sure everything was exactly where it needed to be, and no rush and no pressure. That's what control looks like. 3 days later. Daniel called. I let it ring the first time. Answered the second. Mom. His voice was different. Slower. Less certain. Are you okay? That question came late. I'm fine, I said. A pause. He didn't think you'd actually leave like that. He admitted. Of course they didn't. Because people only believe your limits when you enforce them. I told you I would, I replied. Another pause. Then came the real question. Can we talk? Properly this time. Not about me. About fixing the situation. Or at least, trying to. I thought about it for a second. Then I answered. We can talk, I said. But nothing goes back to the way it was. That's the part most people miss. Leaving isn't the hard part. Not going back is. Okay, he said quietly. But I could hear it in his voice. He finally understood. Not the money, the boundary. And that changed everything, because boundaries don't push people away, they show people where they stand. That call ended quickly. No drama. No emotion. Just clarity, and that's how things stayed. No sudden apologies. No dramatic changes. Just distance. Respectful distance. And honestly, that was enough. Because I didn't need anything else from them anymore. Not validation. Not approval. Not even understanding. I had already given myself what I needed. Control. And once you have that, because the real win wasn't the money, it was finally realizing I didn't need anyone's permission to choose my own life.